that just because it's technologically feasible doesn't mean we should build it. It's a great opportunity for us to build better technology for a better world. I'm very optimistic that we will reach or even surpass that target.
€600 billion. That's more than twice Portugal's annual GDP and the projected figure for how much AI could bring into the European economy by 2030. We'll be discussing exactly how this could happen on today's episode of The Big Question. And we're joined by Sasha Rubel, the head of AI and machine learning at Amazon Web Services. Sasha, great to have you on the show. A report by Strand Partners calculated that €600 billion could be unlocked by AI for European businesses by 2030. How realistic do you think that is, and kind of what barriers could potentially stop us from getting there?
So I'm an optimist at heart, and so I'm very optimistic that we will reach or even surpass that target. Businesses are ready, but one of the things that we identified in this commissioned report is that there are really three key blockers hindering the large-scale adoption of AI. The first is regulatory certainty. Companies that were concerned about the lack of regulatory certainty plan to invest up to 48% less over a 3-year period in artificial intelligence. So ensuring the regulatory certainty necessary for companies in the EU is an absolutely crucial element for AI adoption. The second blocker that was identified was the lack of digital skills. So more than 60% of the companies that we surveyed identified a lack of digital skills in their workforce as one of the key barriers for AI adoption. But when we talked to employees said, look, we would love to learn new skills, but we don't have the time. And the cost of these classes are above all prohibitive. And it's one of the reasons why at the end of last year, Amazon Web Services launched our AI Ready commitment to train more than 2 million people by 2025 in AI ML, and we made available, alongside our machine learning university, more than 80 classes for free online that teach you not only what artificial intelligence and machine learning is, but also what it means to develop and deploy it responsibly, so that there's a general understanding that just because it's technologically feasible doesn't mean we should build it. And so we have classes that are dedicated to things like bias and fairness and responsibility that we see as super key alongside the technical literacy. The third element that we noticed is that there's a huge gap between bigger companies who are adopting AI up to 51% at a faster rate than smaller companies, so around 31%. And so our focus and our DNA is really about democratizing access to this innovation, and the cloud plays a really important role in that. Not only does the cloud reduce the carbon footprint of innovation up to 80%, and in fact, when AWS is powered 100% by renewable energy, which we aim to reach by 2025, so 5 years in advance, up to 96% more efficient. And this means that people can innovate responsibly, and they can also innovate sustainably.
So thinking about this adoption of AI, is it really beneficial for all industries, and are there any sectors that are lagging behind currently?
That's a great question. One of the things that we see currently is that generative AI can actually unlock value across the board, including in industries that you would intuitively think to yourself, oh, this is definitely a great use case for generative AI. One is agriculture. One of our customers, Growy, is using our AI services to improve vertical farming, to address a very big challenge, in fact, around the world right now, which is access to quality food and reduction of hunger. And we have seen firsthand the ways in which deployment of AI in vertical farming not only increases the yield, but also the quality of the food. And then another area that I'll share with you, and one of my favorite use cases, is the area of health. So we are working with a startup named Huron AI. Huron AI is a startup that began in East Africa that's being used now far beyond East Africa. Huron AI was developed because in Rwanda, there are 13.5 million people, and there are 15 oncologists. That means that there's one oncologist per 3,200 active cancer patients. If you compare that to, for example, in the United States, where there's one oncologist for 300 cancer patients, the gap is dramatic. The other challenge is that a lot of these patients are living in rural areas where traveling and accessing a doctor is a challenge. And so we've been working with Huron AI to actually deploy a generative AI solution that allows cancer patients to get personalized medicine and advice in order to address, for example, side effects or symptoms so that they can be tracked more easily by doctors that are otherwise really hard to access. And so this is completely changing the ways in which people think about their health.
So thinking about where the position that we're in currently, what's kind of the most tangible profit that AI has already delivered to businesses in Europe?
What we're seeing right now, particularly after the large-scale growth of generative AI in 2023, we saw in the EU, for example, an increase in AI adoption of 32% and an increase of cloud adoption of 30%. And we see really this adoption of generative AI across industries because there's a recognition that this technology will radically transform the way we work, the way we live, and the way we learn. In terms of profit, one of the first things that we hear from our customers is the question of productivity. So one of the things that we've developed at Amazon Web Services beyond Bedrock is really a service called Amazon Code Whisperer, which takes the heavy lifting out of coding. So software developers all of a sudden are increasing their productivity and can actually focus on more exciting creative tasks related to coding instead of the very repetitive tasks that is a huge part of the daily life of software engineers. So the question of an increase in productivity is one of the biggest returns on investment that we see already.
And so thinking of that kind of return of investment, is that benefit the same for big businesses and kind of SMEs? Who has the most to gain from AI implementation?
So bigger businesses across the EU are adopting AI at around 51%, whereas smaller companies are adopting AI at the rate of around 31%. And it's actually one of the reasons why AWS has placed such an emphasis on empowering startups, which are the backbone of the EU economy, with the necessary skills to be able to adopt AI. So we have initiatives like, for example, our Generative AI Innovation Center that's specifically targeting how to support small-scale startups to help them deliver more value, to help them be more productive, and to help them in reality address some of the biggest challenges of our world today, like things like climate change or access to education, among others. And we've also commissioned recent studies that really show that data-driven businesses invest more in people, in processes, and in technology. Secondly, what we really emphasize in terms of our customer engagement is to look at how to build trust in this technology, because one of the biggest blockers to adopting this technology is a lack of trust and understanding in what artificial intelligence and machine learning is. And so we're convinced that responsibility, and starting from a point of responsibility, drives trust, which drives adoption, which then drives innovation. So really focusing on building that trust through two pillars. One is investing in skills and digitally skilling their workforce. And the second is really looking at how to develop and deploy AI responsibly.
So I know lots of people are worried about AI taking their jobs, for example, but what benefits can employees expect to see from the implementation of AI in their workplaces?
In terms of value for businesses, the first that we see in the adoption of generative AI is increased productivity. So the capacity to take that unstructured data and transform it into insights is something that could have taken several months beforehand, but now takes just several minutes. I'll give you another example. In the past, when we used to do software updates, it used to take us more than 100 engineers and more than a month. Now, we've automated that, and we can do it in 6 minutes. What I will say is that one of the things that we see, particularly in terms of the blockers related to digital skills, is a surprising amount of demographics closer to retirement that are particularly excited about learning new AI skills because they know that AI is going to completely transform the future of work. And again, just as an anecdote, my 18-year-old daughter wants to be a prompt engineer.
Okay.
When I was 18 years old, without telling you how old I am, prompt engineer did not exist as a course of study. What we're seeing now is that digital skills will actually become more important going forward in the workplace than your actual university degree. And alongside digital skills, the capacity to think creatively and be able to address through systems thinking solutions will be one of the most important attributes going forward. So preparing not only young people, but also people who are already in the workforce for this kind of transformation so that they can not be replaced by, but work with and alongside AI is absolutely essential.
Yeah, really super vital. And so I guess lastly, here's a personal question for you. What are you most excited about in the kind of the adoption of AI in Europe?
There are two things that I'm particularly excited by. One is the capacity of how we can use AI to actually address some of the risks and challenges related to AI. And I'm super excited by the work that AWS is doing to, for example, use AI to generate watermarks for audiovisual generative AI generated content to combat misinformation, or how we're developing, for example, the capacity through AI services to automatically detect and remove harmful content or child sexual abuse material online. And so in parallel with the risks related to any kind of growth in technology, it's a great opportunity for us to build better technology for a better world, but it's also a great opportunity for us to make ourselves better so that we are actually developing technology that is targeting the communities as diverse as the individuals that should be building it.
Okay, brilliant. Wow, yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us on The Big Question. It's been fascinating to talk to you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for the great questions.